Audio's on, camera's on.
Yeah.
Recording.
All right. I did my whole checklist.
There we go.
I'm proud of myself. Let's go. Garrett, is this your first time in the business school since you've graduated?
It is, yeah. I didn't expect to be back in Cap Fed so soon, but good to be here.
Wow, I'm glad that I'm here for your first return back to the business school.
It's good. It's good.
Any memories walking through this place?
Well, it was surprisingly quiet in here.
Yeah, I
I
guess
walked
Friday
in.
afternoon.
I know. I realized I was like, wait, it's a Friday. No one goes to business school on Friday, but all sorts of good memories. Oh yeah. Tons.
There was a wraparound line at the bowl when I was driving here, so I think that might have something to do with
Yeah, that's probably where people
the lack of
typically
it.
are.
But not us. We're grinding
No,
at the
never,
business school
never.
doing this. So I was looking back, what was, like, do you have a favorite part of college, favorite takeaway of college?
Yeah, I mean, favorite part is more the social experience, I think.
Yeah.
A lot of people would probably agree with that. I kind of think it's going to be a theme of today's episode of just like the value that comes out of college versus the real world. And most of the great things that people remember, I feel like, are outside of the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
The most memorable one is probably going to Mass Street for all the championships.
Which ones? Okay, are we talking about KU or Chiefs championships?
The Chiefs one sticks out to me for some reason. I mean, they're all great.
Yeah.
But I'd say that the first
More than the KU one.
I might get crucified for that, but I don't
I guess
know.
I'm not that big of a Chiefs fan, so maybe that's why.
For some reason, it sticks out more. I don't know. The KU, by that point, it's like you've been so many times.
So are we doing a third time in a week?
Of course.
Okay.
Of course.
That's your prediction?
Absolutely.
Score prediction?
I have a future bet that we're going to love when that hits. Score prediction, let's go 35-31. Chiefs, of course.
All right, close game.
Oh, I mean,
Hopefully
it's been close
a good
all
game.
year.
Hopefully it's a good game.
Lock it in. Lock it in.
All right, that's good. So I want to hear about what you've been doing in the, 2 months since you've graduated?
Mm-hmm.
Highlights. What did you do right after school? Did you stick around? You're pretty active, and we'll learn this, that you're pretty, you've been involved since college, but
Right.
I want to hear what that looks like going from being a student and maybe being part-time on some of these projects, and then now you can be full-time on some of the projects that you're doing in college.
Yeah, I mean, the day-to-day doesn't look all that different. It's more of now I don't have to go to class and do homework in between. Like you said, I was kind of already doing all the stuff I'm doing. I just had to fit class and homework in between. So that's all great. But it's definitely a little intense when you just go from being in college to, all right, now it's time to try to go and achieve your goals. And all the pressure is on, but it's motivating.
What specifically was that jump? Was it from college to your AI startup, if you want to start talking about that, or was there like a between where you're thinking about?
No, there was no between. I mean, I knew really my goal at the beginning of college was at the end of college to never have to go and work for somebody, which kind of put me in a contradicting place while at KU, because my thought was, okay, well, if I want to be an entrepreneur and start a business, the whole point, at least, or the value of a degree is so you can go and get a job.
Yeah.
But
So what's the point? What was the last 4 years for? Yeah.
Exactly. So that was a bit of a conflict I had at one point of like, why am I doing this if my whole goal is to not even have to use this degree to go and get a job? But it's been good. I mean, it was straight into it. I've been with LightDoc for 2 years now. So me and my brother started an AI startup right at sort of the dawn of AI when ChatGPT first came out. We were like, okay, we got to do something here.
This rocks.
This rocks. And there's an opportunity somewhere, so we just started playing around and figuring out what that opportunity was. Ultimately, our family owns an insurance agency, and so we figured, okay, well, let's figure out what problems we can solve for insurance agencies. Started working through that, just talking to more and more agencies, and ultimately got to the idea of there's all of these back office account management tasks that revolve around documents, specifically policies and contracts. And a lot of those processes revolve around, hey, let me look at this policy, extract data, and then take the next step in my workflow. So for example, for a contract, a lot of times they'll have to analyze a contract, extract the insurance requirements, compare it to a policy, and make sure their insured is in compliance. Well, with AI, you can automate both of those parts, right? Extracting the requirements and then comparing them against the policies. And so the more we just learned about it, the more we realized so much of this back office work revolves around a pretty simple, it all starts with the policy. And so if we can just get data out of a policy, we can automate all sorts of workflows. And we've ended up, it's been about 7 months since we kind of got to that realization and fully in it now, and it's good.
What's it like working with somebody that you're super close with, like your brother, for example?
Yeah.
Drawbacks, benefits, all the above.
I would say, for me personally, it's mostly benefits because, one, there's just immense loyalty. If you have a good relationship with your siblings, obviously it helps. But for example, you can have an argument with my co-founder, right, who's also my brother, and we could yell at each other, get pissed off, but at the end of the day, we love each other. And
Do you ever get gypped because you're the younger brother?
A little bit. I get some grunt work gets thrown my way, but I understand. He's the CEO. He kind of initially started it, and I was in college, graduating, just like, hey, I'm here to help, would love to be part of this. So a lot of the grunt work flows my way, but I'm okay with that. But I mean, at the end of the day, like I said, you can have an argument, you can disagree, and then you can move on. Like that happens every day with brother. You yell at each other, you have a fight, and you wake up the next day and you forgot about it. Versus a typical co-founder that maybe you met 2 years ago, having that conflict feels a lot more awkward, and you need conflict, obviously. So that's one of the biggest benefits is, yes, you can disagree, you can have conflict, but it doesn't really matter because you love each other and you're going to move on either way.
What does it say about finding other business partners in the future? I assume you have plans to start other businesses, things like that. I mean, maybe it's just with your brother every single time, but what does that say about like looking for someone that you trust, and how much value do you put into that, and like how much time you're going to beat around the bush figuring out if this person's a good business partner to go into business with?
Yeah, it's huge. It's people say it all the time. It's like a marriage, right?
Yeah.
And you're in a relationship for multiple years. It's a very serious relationship. I think trust is the biggest thing, and then just like the ability to just, despite the obstacles, just keep going is what you kind of what I personally look for, because that's what I think is important. It's like no matter what happens, we're in the boat and we're rowing together, and as long as the boat's moving, we're all on the same page there. What's another sort of attribute I would look for?
Maybe this will help. I was going to save this till the end, but we're in Lawrence, and so we got to stay loyal to our Lawrence community here. So funny little question. You're looking for your next $1 million business partner, but you have to meet them at a Lawrence bar.
Right.
Where are you going?
Well, I think there's one clear answer here, and that's Bullwinkle's Happy Hour with Hawks.
This is a shameless plug.
This is a shameless plug. Happy Hour with Hawks.
That was not a setup, but I guess elaborate. What is that, Garrett? I don't know what that is.
So I think it was my freshman or sophomore year, the owner of the Bull, who I'm good family friends with, reached out to me. And it was basically like, hey, I want to start this networking group where we can connect young, confident, intellectual people in college with strong people in the business world in Kansas City. That sounds great. It's kind of what I love to do. And so what we did was basically got 5-6 fraternities and sororities and got sort of the top 10 individuals at each fraternity and sorority, brought them together, and for 4 weeks in a row, we meet once a year and we bring in some of the best business people in Kansas City, Peter Maluk being kind of the most notable one. And we really just have sort of an open dialogue, kind of like this, kind of a podcast, panel-style interview. And then it's a great opportunity to network after, and it's a happy hour. So college kids come in, they get some free drinks, and they get to meet some of the best business minds in Kansas City. Yeah. And then last year, I was getting a little busy, looking for someone to help me out, and that's kind of where we connected on another thing, which I'm sure we'll talk about, but obviously knew you were very active, and then asked you to join.
Yeah, for sure. If you hear about it, or if you're invited to it, it will be in April 2025. We're gonna do 4, probably Thursdays again, and so look out for Happy Hour with Hawks.
It's a great time.
Yeah, it is a great time.
It's really, I think it's easy when you get thrown into fraternity or sorority to just kind of you kind of get an automatic friend group.
Yeah,
and it's a good opportunity if you're into entrepreneurship, you're into these kind of things, to expand it out a little bit and find the other people who are also interested in those things. And then you get to meet great people and have free drinks.
That's true. The free drinks bring probably more than half of those people
Probably.
I guess while we're on the topic of college, what were a couple of things you did outside of the classroom, whether that be your scheduling manager job. I guess we just talked about happy hour, but other things outside of that within your fraternity, stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, we can kind of get into the business that I do for a lot of the different bars here. So when I came to KU, before me, my brother, very common theme here, working with my brothers a lot. But my brother, when he was here about 5 years before me, he was doing these event plannings with the Cave specifically. And COVID comes in, shuts it all down, and then we get here, and the Cave was looking for someone else to do it. And so I picked it up from them, and then have since then kind of expanded it to where I essentially work with all different bars throughout Lawrence and just connect with all the social chairs across all the fraternities, and just basically a party broker, if you will.
You bring the fun.
I try to make the fun happen.
You make the fun happen.
I try to make the fun happen.
Is that a commission thing?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, I think it's one of the best jobs you can have in college. It's very low.
You got a book. You basically got a book.
I basically have a book. Exactly, yeah.
I was on your book.
I've
been on the book.
Great client. I mean, you spend very little time doing it, and once the system is kind of set up, it's a win-win for the venues because you're bringing them business and you're managing all of it for them, so they don't have to deal with reaching out to people, promoting events, booking events. They don't have to deal with any of that, and you just take a small percentage of the rental fee. And it's a win-win. I don't know how many other campuses have someone like me on it doing that, but if you're in college and you're looking for a way to make money, go talk to all the bars you can and say, I would love to just bring you business. Let me get a small percentage.
How did you go about doing that? Did you actually approach them just cold? Or?
So I reached out to the previous owners of the Oriad.
Yeah.
And they obviously knew my brother, so I had a quick in there. And then same thing, family friends with the bowl owners. They also own Dempsey's, so reached out to them as well. Reached out to JD, but they already had someone doing it for them.
For the Hawk?
For the Hawk.
The legendary Hawk.
If I would have got them, it would have been monopoly.
That would have been too much.
Too much.
So what does that say about people who, I always talk to people, especially when I'm bartending, and they're like, how do I get a job? I don't see anybody hiring. I haven't seen anything. Nobody's going to come to you and just ask you that. So what does it say about taking the initiative to go? I imagine it wasn't always the most comfortable situation. I have to go talk to be like, hey, I want something from you. Nobody really wants to go up and act like that. So
100%.
what does that say about, what have you gotten out of that? What does it say about you as a person?
I think this is if anyone takes away anything from this conversation, I think this is the biggest thing.
Okay.
Is the fact that exactly what you just said. So many people apply for jobs the way everybody else applies for jobs. And this was kind of the catalyst for Happy Hour with Hawks is typically you go in, whether it's a recruiting fair or on Indeed, and your resume just goes to the bottom of the pile where everyone else's is.
Yeah.
Versus the fact that you can literally reach out to any business owner on LinkedIn, have a direct conversation with the person who's going to make the decision at any time. It's 10 times more effective. And the takeaway I want people to have is the ability to use the college kid card is unbelievably powerful.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so for Light Doc, I spent basically all of last summer on outreach. And my go-to message in every email I sent, every LinkedIn message I sent was opening line, I am a college student looking to learn. That message stands out from all the other cold emails they get in their inbox of, hey, look at this product, look at this product.
Yeah.
And people are just willing to meet with you, willing to help you out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's an incredibly powerful tool to meet people, to get your first job, to get your first sale, all of those things. If you have that college kid card right now, use it while you have it. Because in a couple of years, you're not going to be able to play that card anymore.
Where'd you meet some of your most influential mentors?
The exact way I just told you there was reaching out.
Do you have an example?
Yeah, so George Brooks is a great example. He's the founder and CEO of Crema, which is a design consulting firm out of Kansas City. We had one of the classes here that was go, find a mentor and meet with them. I was like, okay, well, I know how to do this. Let me find somebody. And I've seen him on LinkedIn a bunch. And at that point, I was really deep into product design for Light Doc and didn't really know what I was doing. So reached out to him on LinkedIn. He was like, yeah, I'd love to help. And then for the next 2-3 months, we met every couple weeks. I would say, hey, here's what I'm doing. What are some tips I can have? And again, just pulling that college card. He was willing to help. It's not much time commitment. I think the biggest holdback, though, for people doing this is just that initial fear of like, okay, you've got the message typed up on LinkedIn, sending it, and then having to go and meet the person. I feel like that is the wall that separates people. Like, I actually have to go sit down at a coffee spot and have this conversation in real life. But I'm telling you, if you do that one time, at the end of that conversation, you're gonna be like, man, that was really valuable, and just fire off the messages, and you won't regret it.
Okay. You mentioned this is your first time on the other side of the mic, meaning you used to have a podcast of your own.
Yep.
You probably had similar conversations. You talked to mentors like that. Talk to me about that. What was that experience like?
Yeah, I mean, this is all very similar themes here.
Okay.
But back in high school, the thought was I listened to all sorts of podcasts. So, okay, this is
Was that like before it was cool to have a podcast? Like, I feel like
definitely, yeah.
I feel like people might look at this and just be like, oh, like you're like on the way, like you're like actually after the podcast bubble. You know, it's like everybody has a podcast now. It's like
I don't know if it
the
was
whole joke is like,
Yeah.
oh, if you're in college, like, oh, we got to start a podcast.
Right. I would. It definitely wasn't cool. There was for sure when I started of like, man, my boys might make fun of me for this one. There was definitely a hint of that, a strong hint of that.
Oh, I definitely get that too. But it was
Right.
kind of before it was like mainstream when we were in high school.
Yeah, I think it was junior year of high school I started it.
Yeah.
But the whole story there is actually kind of crazy where it ended up. But basically, the thought was, okay, I know it's valuable to network with people. Everyone says that. How do you get people who are really busy to sit down with you for an hour and give you some of their time? What better way than a podcast?
Yeah.
And it allows you, it kind of takes away that fear of like I said, when you're going to that conversation, that coffee shop, you don't want to seem like an idiot. What questions are you going to ask? Like, there's a lot of hesitation there. But if you have a podcast, it's a very strict format. You're coming in, I'm going to put the mics up. I have a list of questions I'm going to ask you.
Yeah.
A lot of them are selfish questions that I just want to know for myself. And I get to put this out online, add it to the resume, all those.
That's an amazing way to say it. I think I've likened it to like when your student card doesn't work, I think the next best card you can pull is the podcast card. Because there are so many people, especially on this podcast, who I'm sitting down with them in the studio and they would definitely not be talking to me if they were not talking to a microphone. Exactly. Like this thing is the only reason that they're talking to me. I'm a student. They might not even talk to me because I'm a student. So a lot of people like to, because then it's just like you're sharing with more than just one person.
Right. And like we were talking about before we started recording, it's a selfish thing. Like you don't really, who cares if millions of people listen?
Yeah, true.
If you're having good conversations
and you're getting something out of it,
right,
too.
It's plenty valuable. And every guest you have is just another person in your network.
Yeah.
And you've had actually a meaningful conversation with them.
What's your favorite experience you had with your podcast?
I would say the last interview I did, which was Sandy Kemper, who's the CEO of C2FO. They're one of the biggest working capital marketplaces in the world. And my brother worked for him and just told me all these great things about him. I was like, man, this guy's a stud. He's an awesome boss. I was, okay, well, let me shoot him an email, see if he'll talk to me. And he did. Yeah. And it was great conversation. And that was the last one I did, which kind of transitions into the next stage of the podcast.
Yeah.
So that was about senior year. And then freshman year, one of the individuals I interviewed was Parker Graham, CEO of Finata. And interviewed him about 6 months go by, and I'm in Pledship, early morning, cleaning the house, and I get a call from him. He's like, hey, we're starting this podcast at Finata. I would love for you to run it, be in charge of it. I was like, okay, you're telling me I get to just do what I've been doing but get paid now? Sounds like a plan. And so that led me into the next thing, which kind of hints on the whole thing of like, if you can just send one LinkedIn message, that literally led to me getting my first internship at a very cool fintech startup for 2 years, where I was able to now get paid for what I was doing for free. So it's like the power of one message can go a long way.
I want to hear the PJ story.
The PJ story is pretty cool. So Finata is a fintech company. They basically build personalized mobile banking apps for large financial institutions, one of which was First United Bank, and they're one of the largest privately owned banks out of Oklahoma. And we were going down there to interview their CEO and their chief culture officer, and they flew us down on their private jet. So I got to go down there, I think it was in college, left on a Wednesday morning, hopped on their corporate jet, flew down with Parker and our head of marketing, interviewed the CEO of the company and their chief culture officer, hopped back on the jet and flew home. So again, the power of a LinkedIn message can lead you to be on a private jet.
That's all it takes. Get
That's
on
all
a
it
PJ,
takes.
by the way. It's just one LinkedIn
it's-
message.
It sounds like it literally is. Obviously, there was a lot of stuff in between that, but I just think the power of reaching out to individuals at this age when you can, you just have no idea where it's going to go.
You mentioned you were, during part of this process, you were in pledgeship, you were cleaning up the house. I know even after that, you still had other social obligations. Right. I think you were social chair of your fraternity. Talk to me about the balance between that. And was there ever a time when you felt guilty for being on one side of the curve instead of the other? Like you're having too much fun, or you're not grinding hard enough, or you're grinding too hard, you're wasting college. Like, talk to me about that balance.
Yeah, that last thing you said there, I feel that pretty much all the time, of the balance of you have this goal, that thing that I'm supposed to be doing, but I also know I'm in college and everyone says I should use these years to have fun. So I'd say that was the most challenging part of, like, I know what I want to do, but I also know these are 4 years that everyone says you should take advantage of. So balancing that was very tough. In terms of how I did it, I think, and my friends will make fun of me for this all the time, is just I'm a maniacal scheduler. I put it in the schedule.
What's the craziest thing you've put on a schedule? Like craziest calendar invite, like let's play Xbox, 8 p.m. calendar invite, or like,
that's a great question.
You know, have you ever done one of those? Surprise somebody with that? Or maybe not a calendar invite. Maybe it's just
not
on
an
your
invite,
schedule.
not an invite, but I've definitely put some 30 minutes. Lunch has been on there.
Okay.
I'll pencil out
Like
lunch.
Eat.
Yeah, we'll get that detail.
Make sure
just
to
'cause
eat.
For me, it's like you can the scheduling it out for me just frees up everything mentally. It's like, okay, I have all these things that are going on everywhere.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to be thinking about all the things I have going on. I just want to think about the things I need to do.
Do you ever waste time scheduling and you feel like, oh, I'm getting like way too in the weeds here?
100%.
I just spent 30 minutes making a schedule. Like, how unproductive.
100%. And I think it's like a procrastination thing
Yeah.
too. Is like you have this mountain of work in front of you.
And you're just
like,
hiding behind it,
you're just
scheduling
hiding
it
behind,
out.
okay, well, tomorrow I'll do this, and the next day I'll do that. 100%. That's a great point.
Sometimes I feel that too.
Oh, yeah.
So I think I've put some really weird stuff on my calendar. I remember during the summer, during an internship, some other interns, me, would send calendar invites to each other in like 2-hour blocks of time, like go get coffee, and that way you appeared busy, so like you wouldn't get work.
There's a little life hack.
I don't think I did that too much, but I definitely know people do that at their real corporate jobs.
I can imagine.
Kind of along the side of scheduling out your day, you have a mountain of stuff. You just want to go to bed. You just want to go out. You just want to hang out. Like, how do you deal with the ups and downs of motivation? There are times, everybody naturally has times when they're like, okay, I can conquer the world right now. Right. And then there are other times when you wake up and you're like, I got shit to do and I don't want to do it.
Oh, 100%. A couple things here. I think in terms of motivation, I think the biggest thing is to have a goal. How many people just go in and you know, all the people we know, go have a conversation with 20 people, ask them, what's your goal?
Drink this beer.
How many people are going to have an answer?
Yeah.
I think for motivation, it's like if you don't know where you're going, obviously you wake up in the morning and you're like, I don't want to do anything today. It's because you don't have anything you're going for. So for me, it's like you set a very large, lofty goal, set that as your North Star, and at least you always have something where it's like, okay, that's what I'm going for. That's what I'm going for. So that would be the first thing, is just having a goal in mind written down that you look at every day.
Okay.
And you see it written on a piece of paper. Okay, that's what I'm going for. Because that way when you wake up, all right, I at least have something I know I'm trying to chase. And then the other thing is, I feel like motivation, like you said, everyone feels like they can conquer the world at some point. And so for me, motivation is like at the beginning of a process, you have a bunch. And then once you see results, you have motivation. But it's that in-between period where you've started something and you run up on that first obstacle, the motivation just collapses. So I think more than motivation, you need two things, which are kind of the same thing: discipline and consistency. It's like you shouldn't have to feel motivated to do what you need to do. You got to do what you need to do regardless. And the way to get motivation is by doing what you need to do over and over and over again until you have a stack of results that you can look back on and say, hey, there's results. But at that in-between stage of when I know I want to do this thing, okay, hell yeah, I can do this. And then you run up on that first obstacle. From that point, motivation doesn't really matter, in my opinion. It's discipline and it's consistency is the number one.
Do you have any hacks or any tips that you do to overcome that hump, or is it just purely mental? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I need some part of the day where you're going to the gym and you're taking a little bit of break.
Yeah.
It's like you're not just fully in it all day long, just grind. You need a little bit of break to kind of step away. That's kind of just like a daily habit of keeping you not overworking, not getting burnt out.
Yeah.
I think going to bed at the same time and waking up at the same time is very important as well.
Do you get into like the whole sleep? Like, are you like super into that QQ?
It's funny
What
you
is
say
that?
that. I actually just downloaded a sleep app this week. So I'm not into
Plug
sleep,
it.
but I'm
What's the
getting
name?
into sleep.
What's the name? What's your sleep report?
Sleep Watch?
Sleep Watch.
It's all right. I mean,
All
I'm
right.
not.
Does it like track your snoring? I've seen
It
that.
can't.
I've seen that.
There is a feature. You got to pay premium for that,
Oh.
of course. But that is possible. Yeah.
You should get that for plugging it. You should get premium.
Sleep Watch. Hit me up. Yeah, I think going to bed at the same time and waking up at the same time is like the biggest thing for consistency.
Okay.
Is just, if you go to bed at 3 a.m. one night and then you're waking up, okay, I got an 8 a.m. class, the whole thing just gets thrown off. So it's like if you can have one thing that you do consistently, I feel like that. And that's something.
Is there like a second best thing? Because I'm just thinking myself, other college students, that's
for consistency or motivation or
second best thing, like other than going to bed and waking up at the same time. You are in college, your Friday night going to bed time is probably going to be maybe like 4 hours different than your Monday night.
Weekends
going to
we
bed
can have
time.
a little fun.
Just
Weekends we
saying.
can have fun.
And
Absolutely.
so I think for that consistency, like, is there like, do you journal?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, not every day. I think I want to
Yeah.
more and more, but I think, for me, the habits for motivation, I'd say journaling's a big one, and the goal is another big. It's like having that goal. For me, the habit of looking at the goal every day, thinking about it every day, that's what just keeps it constantly moving, and you're constantly chasing something.
Okay. I do this thing. I want to start journaling more. And so journaling every day sometimes can be almost counterproductive to the point where like you're putting things off because,
Right.
I have to journal today. And then it feels like a chore. So I just focus on consistency,
Right.
progress, and then goals, like you said. So every day I just write down literally on the journal, it's 30 lines for the month. So that's 30 days in a month or 31. And I write one thing that I did that day. And so like, what's the highlight of your day? So it helps you be optimistic,
Yep.
helps you be present because now you know what you did that day. And then on the side, I'll have 2 to 3 boxes, and those will be daily goals. And so one might say, go to the gym. One might say, get good sleep. One might say, like, I don't know. I've had some crazy ones, but like when I was in Chicago, I want to like do an act of kindness or give to a homeless person, right? And then at the end of every day, you sit down for 2 minutes, write down something, your highlight of the day, and then you check the boxes off. Like, did I do this? Did I do this? Did I do this? Look back at the end of the month, you didn't really spend that much time journaling, and you have a whole log of your whole month. Like, what'd you do? How consistent were you? So if you're into that, that might be a good tip. Before we get back to Garrett, I want to tell you about how you can win free food from Johnny's Tavern, the sponsor of this episode.
Yeah, Johnny's is one of the best places in Lawrence if you're looking for great food, drinks, and a fun atmosphere.
Also, if you're part of an organization here in Lawrence and you host events, they have a great private space called the Up and Under.
Cooper, what's your go-to Johnny's order?
Good question. Honestly, I switch it up a lot, but you can never go wrong with any of their burgers or their chicken quesadilla.
In support of this episode, Johnny's is kicking in 4 $20 gift cards for our audience, and it takes 0 effort to enter. Head to our Instagram at smarter.pod for a chance to win. Now, back to the episode.
Talk to me about the whole DeepSeek thing.
The DeepSeek?
Like, did that make our AI better? Because didn't they I don't know. I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, so I think the big unlock was basically they were able to achieve same results with less computing power.
Are you buying into the whole ChatGPT? Like they use ChatGPT to like train their model, and so it's not actually.
Who knows what? I've seen a bunch of stuff about it being potentially not what they say it is, but there's a whole white paper about it, and it's kind of hard to fake.
Has it shaken up your work at LightDoc?
Personally, no, but I think it's going to have great impacts for us just because the more competition there is on sort of the model side of things, the more that benefits the companies that are building based off the models. Mm-hmm. And if DeepSeek can come out and immediately drop their price or open source it so it's free, which is, I think that was sort of the big thing, is basically OpenAI which was originally supposed to be open source, meaning they write the code, they publish it, and then anybody can copy that and run their own model on their own computer. That's what they said they were going to do from the get-go, which is why Elon Musk put $100 million into the company. And then over time, they realized, well, we can actually make ungodly amounts of money doing this. And so they went from a open source nonprofit to a closed source for-profit company, which is why Elon was not very happy with them. And then you have DeepSeek comes in and drops the open source version of it and kind of just shook up the whole world.
But in reality, they did what OpenAI said they would do.
Exactly, but they did it, allegedly, they did it much more efficiently.
Okay.
So I think the implications of how that impacts our business is you're going to see the models that we're using, the price of those is going to go down naturally, just because there's a free version over here that we can use. OpenAI is now going to have to drop the price of their model. So overall, I think it's great for consumers. It's great for companies who are building using the models. So not like the people who are building the foundational models, but people like us who take those models and go build other applications. I think it's fantastic for all of us. And it'll just create a lot more competition, which is great for the end consumer. The stock market, not great for that at first. I think the thing there was basically NVIDIA, obviously they had their valuation was assuming, hey, you're going to need this much GPUs, which is essentially like the processor to power AI.
Yeah.
You need this much GPU in order to build modern day AI. Well, DeepSeek comes out and say, actually, we only need this much. And so now NVIDIA, who was supplying, they all thought, hey, we were going to need to supply this much. Their valuation's way up here. Well, it turns out you don't need, a tenth. You need a tenth of the amount. That's why their stock price plummeted. But it'll be interesting. It's just insane how much stuff changes every 2 weeks. Things are changing.
And so what's that like being in a business that's so dynamic that you go to bed and then you're in the AI business. You wake up, there's another, not even just a player, but like one of the top players now, because like assuming everything's as efficient as they say overnight. Does that instability ever make it even more risky, as if it wasn't already risky enough to start a business?
Yeah, there's a lot of conversation about, okay, AI makes it super easy to build applications, which is fantastic. But if so many people can build those applications, if now everybody can go out and build the next super cool app using AI, that just means there's now, instead of 1,000 startups doing it, there's now 10,000, which means it's way harder to compete in that market. And so a lot of people think that, okay, well, maybe it's actually going to get more and more difficult to start businesses, and all that power is just going to go to the people at the top already.
Yeah.
Because why would I switch to this small startup when there's 1,000 other ones that do it? Why would I not just stick with the big company that I know already? So there's one thesis that it's actually going to make competition a lot harder. But on the other end, you don't want to build a business that all OpenAI has to do is release a new feature and all of a sudden that business is destroyed.
Yeah.
Which kind of happened with the first place we started, LightDock, which was we didn't even initially start LightDock as LightDock. It was another company where we were focused on automating quality assurance for call centers, where basically instead of having to listen to a call, you just drop the audio file in and we would grade it. It's a whole thing. Whenever you hear this call is being monitored for quality assurance, typically there's a person listening to that and actually grading it. And then ChatGPT comes out with a feature where you can actually now have AI bots answering the phones.
Okay.
And so it's like one thing they released switched up kind of our whole plan. And so there's difficulty on that side of you don't want to just build something that these monoliths can come in and destroy overnight, but you also are now competing with 10,000 other startups. So it's challenging. It's challenging.
Okay. We've been talking a lot about AI. Obviously, that's where you work right now. You're very entrepreneurial outside of AI too. Like you've had other interests, other experiences. You're given a lump sum of money today to start a business in a different field that's not AI. What are you doing?
I'm glad you asked. So I came prepared for this one.
Okay.
A little prepared. So if you asked me a few weeks ago, the first thing I probably would have said would be some sort of TikTok shop, just because the ability to they released this thing where you can now sell products directly on TikTok, and people were just going crazy on there by just making viral content that would then they could immediately resell something in the application. Then they also made it so that you can sell other people's products. So you could go on there as, Joe Schmo and go find the top selling product that's on the marketplace, start promoting that on your account, and just create viral content and sell it through there. And I think that was super interesting just because you could see what's trending in the marketplace, go find an alternative for that, sell it for a little cheaper, and just match the content. So I think that was a really interesting play, but now TikTok might not be around.
Yeah.
So that's what I would have said a few weeks ago.
Okay.
I think if you're giving me a lump sum of money, what I would do is actually not go build a business, but buy a business. And there's an interesting play here and I think it's a great thing for college students. By the way, if you need business ideas, follow My First Million podcast. I hate to plug another podcast in here, but they just literally dump out not millions, but all sorts of business ideas. Okay. They have a whole site where you can just go and look at their business ideas.
Really?
Amazing podcast. So a lot of this kind of comes from that. But they had a girl on who right after college, she just started researching a bunch of businesses and just built a massive database of businesses, how much they were making, and then used seller financing to buy the business. The one she chose was an egg carton business, which you'd think, okay, what does a girl graduating from college know about egg cartons? But she just found this small business in the middle of America, and it's now making her millions and millions of dollars, and she bought it without putting up any of her money via seller financing. So I think there's two possible answers here. One would be, if you're giving me a lump sum, just go and buy a business that's already working. That's maybe it's a painting company that's, this guy's owned it for 20 years. He's kind of kept it small. He wants to retire. You know how to do online marketing really well. So come in there, buy the business. Great. If you don't have that lump sum of money, though, I think it's really interesting for people who want to get into entrepreneurship to just try to do this seller financing route where you go to the owner and you say, listen, you want to retire. That's great. Let me operate your business, and you'll get 50% of the profits for the next 10 years. You don't have to do a single thing. I'll take over. And now you own a business without putting up any of the money. And the seller financing part is you're basically just taking profits from the business, paying the previous owner over time. So I think that's another interesting thing that people who want to get in entrepreneurship should look at.
Yeah. What about the risk about, even if it's seller financing, graduating college, going and starting a business, even if you're able to work out that seller financing, there's still a lot of risks with business ownership. Do you think there's a specific archetype where, okay, entrepreneurship's for you, and then a specific other college student where you're like, I wouldn't recommend it? Or do you think it's kind of as long as you have the courage, it would be best case scenario for everybody?
I think you said the exact right words here, which is the courage. It's obviously risky, but at the same time, if your goal is, hey, I want to start a business, right? You're in college, I would love to be a business owner one day. There is, in my eyes, zero risk of starting that right out of college. That's kind of
That's a hot take. But, it could be valid. Back it up.
So, yeah, the way I see it is, one, you only fail when you stop. And so, okay, the first time you start a business, you have a 1 in 10 chance of succeeding. All right? Not great odds. But what about the second time you start it? Now you have a 1 in 9 chance. What about the third time? Now it's a 1 in 8 chance. And then you just keep playing that out, and eventually those odds of failure get lower and lower. Yeah. And you don't fail until you just stop. So as long as you're playing the game, you're not going to fail, in my eyes. And then in terms of risk, the way I see it is the amount of skills you learn by building a business, your foundational skill set, if you just go and for 6 months try to build a business, actually try, the skills you're going to learn are going to create more value for you than if you were going and working for a company. And so let's say I fail at this company, right? Blows up.
Yeah.
Well, look at all the things I've learned in the past 2 years doing this. That's not a failure. That's all reward that now I can go and take on to the next thing. Or I can now go to a company and say, I know how to do product design, I know how to do this, I know how to do that, I know how to. So it's not, if you fail, it's not a failure, like I said, unless you give up. And then all the things you've learned along the way, that's just, free money.
Yeah.
You're not losing anything there. That's all a win.
On the same note, this is kind of a good way to close this out, is what's the plan? Like for the next 3 to 5 years, what are you thinking? Is it that hard to predict because it's such a changing business?
Yeah, I mean, for us, so
You could do a plan A, plan B too, if you got that.
Right. I mean, the ultimate goal is to sell our business, move on to the next thing. I mean, I would like to, 3 to 5 years, I think we can get to that point where we have a profitable business that someone wants to buy, and then going and looking for the next opportunity. And then real estate's not really something we've dove into much, but that's also something I'm involved in. And so continue to do that as well, just kind of on the side, kind of. You kind of do real estate on the side,
Yeah.
but that is the plan.
Real estate, residential, or what would you think?
Yeah, so
Multifamily type situation? Or?
yeah, I mean, we started out, my brothers and I bought a single family house, then we bought a duplex, and then we were starting to play around in the storage facility space as well. Right now, we're just kind of looking at more fix and flip kind of deals.
Okay.
So just buying a house, fixing it up, flipping it, pretty typical stuff there. I got my real estate license as well. Again, going back to
You're licensed?
yes,
Wow, this is
I'm a
official.
licensed agent.
All right.
So if you need a house, going back to like the risk thing, it's like the skills I've learned by just underwriting deals and going through real estate. It's like even if we don't do a deal, all of that is value add.
Yeah.
So licensed agent might have that as a backup plan as well. If nothing's going well, we can sell some real estate. But yeah,
All right.
That's the future.
Garrett Amundsen, everybody. Thank you so much for your time, man. Like,
for
this has
having
been
me.
great.
It's been awesome.
I guess I wish you the best in your future endeavors and stick
Likewise.
around. Stick around lunch. Are you going back to Austin? Where are you going?
No, I'll be here for the rest of the semester.
Okay.
Yep.
And then you go back to Austin, I assume.
No, we'll see.
Planning on just
Our-
staying local, though? That'd be
Probably,
nice.
Probably.
Okay.
It's a big insurance hub here, so it's a good place to be if you're selling to insurance agencies.
All right. Man, thanks for your time, Dave.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.